You know, people say evolution is not a bad philosophy, but at the same time, it was Hitler's religion during the Third Reich in Germany. Hi, my name is Eric. In this next seminar, Dr. Hovind exposes some of the terrible things that have been done in the name of evolution. Because dictators throughout time have used the evolutionary ideas to support their brutal tactics.
I taught high school science for 15 years, and now for 14 years I've been an evangelist, traveling and doing seminars on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. And tonight we're going to share with you some of the dangers of this evolution theory. I don't leave my gorgeous wife and travel every week of the year because I like being gone. Folks, evolution is not just a dumb idea, it's a very dangerous philosophy. I've only got 3 things I want to cover, but it's probably going to take several nights to do that. First of all, I want to tell you what on earth is happening. And secondly, why is the evolution theory dangerous, and what do you do about it? Pretty simple. Okay, what is happening? Tonight as I speak, our president is announcing we're about to go blow up Iraq, I believe, right? The world seems to be coming unglued at the seams. There are wars and rumors of wars every place we look. Why on earth would Joseph Stalin order the execution of 14,700 Polish prisoner of war officers? I thought there was a Geneva Convention. Why do you order the execution of prisoners of war? Why did Hitler order the execution of nearly 6 million Jews, plus others? Why did Pol Pot, the leader in the Cambodian Khmer Rouge, order the execution of 1/3 to 1/2 of his entire population, his own people? He killed them. Why? Why would somebody do that? Why would the Australian Aborigines be rounded up like cows and shot so their heads could be put in museums years ago? Why would somebody do that? Why did Kip Kinkle murder his parents, 2 other classmates, and shoot 26 other ones? Why would a student do that? Kip said, if there was a God, he wouldn't let me feel the way I do. There is no God, only hate. On May 21st, 1998, 15-year-old Kip Kinkle, a student at Thurston High School, that's in Oregon, near Eugene, allegedly entered the school cafeteria and fired more than 50 rounds from a semi-automatic rifle. 26 students were injured, 2 killed. Later, the bodies of his parents were found in his home. He was then arrested and taken to a police headquarters where he attempted to murder a detective during his questioning. Kip said, if there was a God, he wouldn't let me feel the way I do. There's no God, only hate. Why have we had nearly a 1,000% increase in violent crimes since I was a boy? I remember the days when you did not have to lock your house. We'd go off on vacation for 2 weeks. I never had a key to my house growing up. Never did have a key. I don't know if it even had one. You didn't need one in those days. Why would there be such a horrendous increase in unwed birth rates, and so much of our moral structure is just simply unraveling? What on earth is happening? Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold made a videotape prior to the Columbine shootings. On that tape, they said, talking about one of the football players, he doesn't deserve the jaw evolution gave him. Look for his jaw, it won't be on his body. These 2 boys were very strong believers in evolution. They did the shooting on Hitler's birthday on purpose. They shot Isaiah Shoals just simply because he was black. They shot Cassie just because she believed in God. Same thing with Rachel. What happened? Why would somebody do this? What's going on in our thinking? Well, the newspaper article in Columbine High School said, the clothes may give a clue to the thinking of these teenagers. The autopsy said one of the boys' shirts said natural selection on the front. Interesting. Textbooks used in Escambia County, Florida, this textbook, says evolution and natural selection go together. This textbook says natural selection causes evolution. Well, just what is this natural selection? Oh, you see, Adolf Hitler thought he would speed up the process by eliminating the inferiors. Hitler honestly thought he was doing the world a favor. So did Joseph Stalin. So did Pol Pot. Why do people do these things, though? What is wrong with our thinking? Right after the Columbine shooting, almost instantaneously, 5 more students from within the Springfield School District were arrested for threatening to murder students. principals, or teachers. In the adjacent school districts, more students were arrested for violent threats, and in one case, an elementary school boy shot 5 of his classmates with a BB gun. Could it possibly be that what we're teaching them is causing this behavior? You know, what you believe determines how you behave. If you're raised up in a head-hunting society, and you're taught from the time you're a boy, if you go off to war and shoot somebody, you ought to kill him and cut off his head and eat the brains because you get his spirit. I mean, if you really believe that, guess what you're going to do when you go off to war? Your behavior is determined by your beliefs. What you believe determines how you behave. It's always been that way, and it's no different today. Could it be that this evolution theory is to blame? This textbook says you're an animal and share a common heritage with earthworms. Question: if evolution is true, how are the kids supposed to tell right from wrong? I spoke in a public school in Pennsylvania one time. A kid sat on the second row, and he said, "Mr. Hovind, I'm an atheist." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yep, there is no God." I said, "Well, tell me, son, are you sure?" He said, "Yep, I'm sure." I said, "Well, son, do you know everything?" He said, "No." I said, "Do you know maybe half of everything?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay, well, let's just pretend that you know half of everything. Is it possible that God exists in the other half you don't know?" Brand new thought rattled around in his brain for a while and got lost, I believe. I said, "By the way, son, if there's no God, how do you tell right from wrong?" He said, "Oh, that's easy." He said, "I determine what's right and wrong." He said, "I'm the God of my own universe." I said, "I'm glad to hear about that, son, because I'm going to shoot you in 5 minutes." He said, "You can't do that." I said, "Oh, yeah, I can. You see, I'm the God of my own universe. And I decided it's fine for me to shoot you." Question: exactly how do we tell right from wrong? In the first couple of seminar tapes, we talked about a variety of topics like the Big Bang Theory, how it's a big dud. We talked about the Garden of Eden, and we talked about why the earth cannot be billions of years old, and why did the people live to be 900 years old before the big flood came. We talked about dinosaurs, and students are being lied to about dinosaurs. They did not live millions of years ago. And on tape number 4, we talk about a whole bunch of lies in the textbooks. Now here we're going to talk about what's happened in the last 150 years since evolution became a popular theory. What on earth is happening? And what you can do about it. We'll get to that eventually. We're going to review some of what we covered on tape number 4, some of the lies in the textbooks, and then go on into how it carries into some practical steps we can take. What do you do about it? We covered in the last sessions how that James Hutton wrote a book in 1795, and he said the earth is millions of years old. Now, during the late 1700s, most folks believed the Bible, and most folks thought the earth was about 6,000 years old, because if you add up the dates in the Bible, you're going to get about 6,000, 4,000 BC, not millions. So James Hutton came along and caused people to doubt the earth was 6,000 years old. Then, his book had a very strong influence on a lawyer from Scotland named Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell wrote a book in 1830, and in his book, he developed what we call today the geologic column. Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, and maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer. This whole thing was made up by Charles Lyell in 1830, and the geologic column does not exist any place in the world except in the textbooks. It's pure imagination. It doesn't exist. But all of evolution theory is based on that dumb geologic column, made up in 1830. This fellow said, "I myself have little doubt that in England it was the long-age uniformitarian geology and the theory of evolution that changed us from a Christian to a pagan nation." He's right about that, and England is a pagan nation. And folks, I don't know if America ever was a Christian country or not, but it's not now. We are a pagan nation also. What has happened? Charles Lyell's book had a very strong influence on a young preacher named Charles Darwin. Darwin graduated from Bible college to be a preacher. In 1859, after 22 years of writing, Darwin finally published his book, The Origin of Species. We'll get into more of that later, the real title to the book. Darwin's philosophy was strongly influenced by people like Charles Lyell, people like Thomas Malthus. Malthus had written a book that said, there are more babies born than can possibly survive, so it's best if the weakest die off. That greatly influenced people like Charles Dickens when he wrote the Christmas Carol. Remember the scene in there where Scrooge said, well, if he's going to die, let him die then, and decrease the surplus population. Remember that line in there? I don't think you can understand the Christmas Carol, the history behind that, until you understand how evolution ties in. James Hutton's book made people doubt the earth was 6,000 years old. Along came Charlie Lyell, and people began to doubt the flood. Because instead of the flood making all those layers, they said, oh, maybe each layer is a different age. And then along came Charles Darwin, and people began to doubt the Creator. And so by the mid-1800s, the Western world, at least, was left in a bad situation. They said, well, if there's no God, who's in charge? Well, it must be us. This led directly to the rise of humanism. Humanism is the teaching that there is no God, so we must be God. We make the rules. We decide what's right and wrong. For the next 50 years, after Darwin's book came out, many isms arose in the world: Marxism, Nazism, communism. These things, communism would have been just a footnote in a history book if it hadn't been for evolution coming along at the right time. We never would have heard of communism, most of us wouldn't, if it hadn't been for Charles Darwin coming along and giving justification to that dumb idea of communism. Hoyle said, I'm haunted by a conviction that the nihilistic philosophy, which so-called educated opinion chose to adopt following the publication of The Origin of Species, committed mankind to a course of automatic self-destruction. A doomsday was then set ticking. I agree, Fred. Once you start believing there's no God and we're in charge, then we're in trouble. There was a Russian atheist astronomer came to America one time, and he spoke at one of the universities, and he said, now folks, either there is a God or there isn't. I thought, boy, this guy's brilliant. But then he said, both possibilities are frightening. I thought, wow, that is brilliant. You see, if there is a God, we better find out who He is and find out what He wants and do what He says. Amen. If there is no God, we're in trouble, because we're hurtling through space at 66,000 miles an hour and nobody's in charge. Pretty scary thought. Charles Darwin said, often a cold shudder has run through me as I have asked myself whether I may have devoted myself to a fantasy. Well, Charlie, you did devote yourself to a fantasy. If you believe you came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago, you need help. You were designed for a purpose. Now, what is it? There are 4 great questions that every single religion in the world tries to answer. Even atheism, which is a religion, you have to believe there is no God. There's no way to know that. The 4 great questions every religion tries to answer: who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going when I die? The way you answer these questions depends upon how you view the world. There are basically only 2 ways to look at this world. One view says, there's incredible design, there must be a designer. That's the creationist worldview. Other people look at the world and say, nobody made it. It just made itself. They don't believe God created the heaven and the earth. They think a big bang made this world from nothing. That's called the humanist worldview. It just made itself. The first plank in the Humanist Manifesto in 1933 was the universe is self-created, self-existing, and not created. That's the first thing they have to agree to be a humanist. There's now been Humanist Manifesto 2 in 1973 and Humanist Manifesto 3 in the year 2000. They have to declare what they believe. Humanism is a religion. You have to believe there is no God. So why is this theory dangerous? Evolution, I am convinced after studying this now for 30-some years, evolution is absolutely the foundation for communism, Marxism, Nazism, socialism, racism. We'll get into some more of that in a minute. Number 1, I think evolution is dangerous because it's bad science based on lies. There is no scientific evidence to back up this evolution theory. We've been offering $250,000 for a long time at our ministry for somebody who could give us some real scientific evidence for evolution. It is funny, brother, to see the people try to turn stuff in. One guy said, I've got proof for evolution. I said, really, what do you have? He said, well, I'm working in the laboratory right now, and we have developed soybean plants that are resistant to frost. I said, man, that's good. That'll really be handy. I said, what did you start with? He said, well, soybean plants. I said, oh, what do you have now? He said, I've got a whole new species. I said, of what? Of soybean plant. I said, I'm sorry, sir. That's not evolution, okay? That's a variety of a soybean plant. And it's interesting, and I'm glad you're able to do that. But that's not evolution. There is no evidence whatsoever that any animal ever produced a different kind of animal. So why would anybody believe such a dumb idea? And how can this be so dangerous? Well, we'll cover some of the isms in just a minute. But evolution is based on lies and bad science. There is no good science to back it up. This textbook says, evolution is a fact. Evolution is a fact, not theory. Birds arose from non-birds and humans from non-humans. No person who pretends to any understanding of the natural world can deny these facts any more than she or he can deny that the earth is round, rotates on its axis, and revolves around the sun. Sounds like he's open-minded for a discussion, doesn't it? This is not a fact, folks. Evolution is a mantra. They say this over and over and over, hoping it will become true. It's all it is. They just keep repeating it. Oh, evolution's a fact, it's a fact, it's a fact. Well, you better define what you're talking about with evolution. We do that on videotape number 4, the 6 different meanings of this word evolution. This textbook says evolution has evidence from fossils, from structure, from molecular biology, from development. Any evidence that's used to support evolution has been proven wrong. Now, I said many times, I'm not trying to get evolution out of the schools. I just want the lies out of the textbooks. We almost got a bill passed in Arkansas a couple of years ago, and I went up to Arkansas and testified before the Senate, before the House of Representatives Committee that was looking at this bill, HB 2548, I believe it was. And the bill simply said, Arkansas will not use tax dollars to purchase materials if they contain knowingly fraudulent information. We're not going to buy books that have lies in them. And it gave a few examples, like some of the examples I gave in my seminar. If it says the embryo has gill slits, we're not going to buy it. I stood up and testified for 45 minutes before this committee. After I got done, the ACLU lady, woman I mean, she got up and she said, folks, this is obviously an anti-evolution bill. One of the representatives said, ma'am, evolution is not mentioned in this bill. All this bill says is we're not going to buy books if they have lies in them, and these things are lies, so we're not going to buy that book. How can you say this is an anti-evolution bill? And she said, everything mentioned in this bill is used to support the evolution theory. And the guy said, well, ma'am, is it true that these things mentioned here are false? She said, well, yes, but obviously this is an anti-evolution bill. She knew full well, if you took all the lies out of the textbooks, there would be nothing left to support the evolution theory. I was in a debate one time at University of West Florida, and the professor got up and he said, now, Mr. Hovind, you're claiming all these things are lies, and you're right. All these things have been proven wrong, but, he said, I got a question for you. You told us we got to take all this stuff out of the book. What are you going to replace it with? I said, folks, what he's trying to not say is, we want the kids to believe in evolution. We have to give them some evidence, and all we have are these lies, and you want to take these out of the book, so you better find some more evidence for my theory. I said, sir, if you don't have any evidence for your theory, I'm sorry. Maybe you ought to consider getting a new theory. I could suggest one for you, if you'd like. He did not like. He don't want to hear about it, okay? All they have to support their theory are things that have been proven wrong many, many years ago. Here's some of the lies we covered in the first how many hours of this seminar so far. I'll just review them very, very quickly. The Colorado River was not formed slowly. The Grand Canyon did not slowly form by the Colorado River running through it. Okay? The geologic column does not portray Earth's history. It does not even exist anywhere in the world. Rocks do not date the fossils. The fossils do not date the rocks. It is based on circular reasoning. We cover that on videotape number 4. There are no index fossils. There's no such thing as an index fossil. The layers are not different ages. Petrified trees connecting them all prove the layers all formed at the same time. We cover that on video number 4. Plants and animals are not related to each other. They have the same designer, but not the same uncle and grandpa. Change in species is not the real meaning of the word evolution. That's not really what they mean. There's a whole lot more to that. We covered that on video 4. Natural selection does not cause any evolution. Natural selection selects. It doesn't create a thing. We believe in natural selection. The peppered moth story never happened. It's a lie. Comparative anatomy does not prove common ancestry. We covered that on videotape number 4. Humans never have any gill slits. It's a human at conception. It's not a fish or an amphibian or anything else. An abortion is murder, plain and simple. Okay? The appendix is not vestigial. You do need your appendix. The whale does not have a vestigial pelvis. That is a lie. The human tailbone is not vestigial. If you think it is, I'll pay to have yours removed. Dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago. Man did not evolve from animals or cavemen. The Big Bang is a big dud. It didn't happen. The horse series in your textbooks is a lie, proven wrong 50 years ago. Life cannot evolve from non-living matter like the textbook says. The law does not ban teaching creation science like some people want you to think. It's perfectly fine to teach creation science in the public schools. We'll get into more of that later. Smaller is not simpler. A little paramecium is more complex than a space shuttle. Smaller is not simpler. Smaller is more complex. But birds did not come from dinosaurs. Talk about a dumb idea. The eye did not arise by slow changes over billions of years. The first bird did not hatch from a reptile egg, like Goldschmidt said. The trees of life in the textbooks are pure imagination. They didn't happen, folks. They drew it on paper, and that's as far as it goes. It didn't happen in reality. DNA does not prove evolution, it proves creation, it proves a designer. Fossils do not provide any evidence for evolution. Fossils don't count at all. You find a bone in the dirt, you can't prove that bone had any kids, let alone kids that lived, and certainly not kids that were different than the grandparents. Fossils simply are a dead-end street. They don't count for evolution. The Earth is not billions of years old, and the Earth was never a hot molten mass. The Pangea theory that's taught in your books never existed. They say, all the continents used to fit together. I get that all the time. Oh, do you think all the continents used to fit together? Used to touch each other? I said, well, they still are. Just the low places are full of water. I mean, the continents are still connected, you know. What do you mean, did they? Hello. They still are. Animals and plants are designed, not adapted to their environments. There are no simple living organisms. Life did not arise 3.5 billion years ago, like the textbook says. The sun did not form before the earth, like the textbook says. Scientists have not made life in the laboratory. Snakes do not have vestigial legs. The earth never had an oxygen-free atmosphere, like the textbook says. No animal is related to any other kind of animal. DNA is more than just chemicals. It carries information. Mutations do not improve the species. Similar bone structure does not prove a common ancestor. It proves a common designer. Amino acids do not prove relationships. Humans are not related to chimps. Darwin did not prove evolution. Textbooks do not teach kids to think critically. They teach them to not think at all. Arranging animals on paper does not prove a thing. Archaeopteryx is not part reptile. It's 100% bird. Feathers did not evolve from scales. It's not just the religious fundamentalists who disbelieve in evolution. Most folks disbelieve in evolution. Evolution is not a light which illuminates all facts. There is no evidence for the magnetic reversals at the ocean floor. The Constitution does not discuss separation of church and state. It does not discuss that. The Supreme Court did not ban creation. Let's give a little bit of the history of what really happened. In the 1800s, almost all the textbooks were thoroughly packed with information about creation, Christianity, godly teaching. Kids memorized Bible verses. I remember in public school in Illinois growing up, we memorized Bible verses and said prayer every morning. Didn't hurt the kids a bit. Helped them quite a bit. Back then, kids got in trouble for their own spitwads. Today, it's for bringing guns and shooting people. It's a different world, and some of you older folks know what I'm talking about. It has changed radically. In 1925, Tennessee passed a law that said you cannot teach creation, you cannot teach evolution. It actually banned the teaching of evolution in the public schools. It's called the Butler Act. The ACLU, which is the American Communist Lawyers Union, decided they wanted to test this law. So they ran an ad in the paper, said, we're looking for a teacher willing to claim that he taught evolution so we can have a trial to try to get this law overthrown. A guy named John T. Scopes volunteered. He said, I don't know if I taught evolution or not, but I did sub for a biology class one day, and I think all we had was a study hall, but if you want me to go testify that I taught evolution, I'll do it. So John Scopes went on the trial, lasted 10 days in the hot July, Tennessee summer. After 10 days, John Scopes was found guilty of breaking the law. The law said, you can't teach evolution. He claimed he did, so he's found guilty. He admitted he did. He was fined $100. Case was over. Later, the fine was overturned on a technicality, but the judgment was not overturned. The evolutionists lost the Scopes monkey trial. If you want to read the entire story about what really happened, you can see it right here in this book, The Scopes monkey trial, the world's most famous court trial. And by the way, if there's a movie circulating around your school called Inherit the Wind, you better be real careful about that. That's a dangerous movie. That does everything they can. It twists everything about the trial to make the Christians look dumb. You want to read word for word every word that was spoken there? Here it is, right here, the court transcript verbatim. You can get it from Bryan College in Dayton, Tennessee. The Dayton courthouse is still there with a big museum where you can go out through and see where it actually happened. If you go north of Chattanooga about, 70 or 80 miles, you can get to Dayton, Tennessee. Been through there a bunch of times. There's a good a good book expose about the Inherit the Wind movie that circulates around. And just about every year, this is shown in public schools here in Pensacola, where they try to teach the kids the Christians were dumb and they lost the trial. They changed all sorts of things about that. And you ought to be up in arms over that being shown to your kids. You can sign a statement saying, I don't want my child shown the movie Inherit the Wind. Have it notarized and take it into the school. They won't show your kid. You say it's against my religious convictions to lie to my kids, and that movie's a lie. Okay? But I guarantee it'll be shown this year and next year and the next year. I saw it about 4 times growing up before I realized what a lie it was. You want to get the material from Bryan College, there's their phone number, or from George Serrell, who has an excellent article about the Inherit the Wind, what really happened in the book the real trial compared to the Inherit the Wind movie, which is just baloney. Or you might want to get the book Ride to Glory. You can get it through our ministry. I don't read novels much, but this one is incredible. This guy said, what if the Scopes trial was redone this now, in the 21st century, at a modern university? Whew. Brother, I couldn't put it down. I mean, I read a lot of books, but this one, I never should have started it, man. I couldn't. I didn't sleep for 4 days trying to finish that. It wasn't quite that bad, but in 1968, the last law banning evolution was overturned. Now keep in mind, there were many laws against teaching evolution until 1968. There's never been a law against teaching creation. The laws banned evolution. In 1980, the state of Arkansas passed a law and said, we want balanced treatment. If the teacher teaches evolution, they must also teach creation. Give it balanced treatment. The court in Arkansas, 8th Circuit Court, I believe, struck that down and said, no, this law is unconstitutional. They didn't say you couldn't teach creation. They just said you can't demand equal time. And the atheists started going around saying, see, you can't teach creation. That's not what the law said. It's not what the court said. They never said you can't teach creation. They just said you can't require that the teachers teach creation. If we passed a law in Florida that said the teachers are required to breathe, I bet that law would be struck down because, I mean, you probably ought to breathe, but they can't require that you breathe, right? And that's what happened with the Arkansas law. Then Louisiana passed a law requiring teachers to teach creation if they taught evolution. Again, balanced treatment. Supreme Court struck this one. It went all the way to Supreme Court. Supreme Court struck it down. After the 1987 ruling by the Supreme Court, Stephen Jay Gould, who hated creationists and had a set of my tapes on his shelf. I went up and visited his office. His secretary was there. She said, yeah, he's got your tapes right here, Mr. Hovind. I never did get to meet him. He died a few years ago. He knows better now. He's no longer an evolutionist. But Stephen Gould said after the verdict, he said, no statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It could be taught before and it can be taught now. They never said you can't teach creation. The court said you can't require it. That's all. And don't let anybody tell you different. That's what the law, that's where it stands right now. Michael Zimmerman said, and he's an evolutionist, he said the Supreme Court ruling did not in any way outlaw the teaching of creation science in public schools. Quite simply, it ruled that in the form taken by the Louisiana law, it's unconstitutional to demand equal time for this subject. Creation science can still be brought into science classrooms if and when teachers and administrators feel it is appropriate. Numerous surveys have shown that teachers and administrators favor just this route. And in fact, creation science is being taught in science courses throughout the country. Eugenia Scott is the president of the National Center for Science Education. Boy, what a lousy name. They're not in favor of science. They're in favor of defending evolution is all. She said, the Supreme Court decision says only that the Louisiana law violates the constitutional separation of church and state. It does not say that no one can teach scientific creationism, and unfortunately, many individual teachers do. Some school districts even require equal time for creation and evolution. Here's the web page, the head of the front home page on the National Center for Science Education. Welcome to the home page of NCSE, a non-profit, tax-exempt membership organization working to defend the teaching of evolution against sectarian attack. We are a nationally recognized clearinghouse for information and advice to keep evolution in the science classroom and scientific creationism out. That's why they exist. I spoke in Berkeley last November, Berkeley, California. That's where these guys are located. I went and visited the National Center for Science Education. It's a little bitty storefront building. They had, I think, 4 or 5 employees, all crammed in this little building. I thought, this is the National Center for Science Education. Property's expensive in Berkeley, I understand, good place for them. I went in there. They didn't know who I was. I didn't tell them my name. I went in there, hey, what kind of information do you guys hear? I used to be a science teacher. And they began giving me pamphlets and articles and stuff, Finally, one of the guys said, your voice sounds familiar. What's your name? I said, Kent Hovind. He said, I thought so. They taped a piece of paper on the floor. It says, Kent Hovind stood here. And I understand they won't walk on it. They walk around it. One of the guys came to all 10 hours that I lectured at Berkeley and asked me question after question after question. Look, these folks are not the enemy. Now, they do work for him, but they're not the enemy, okay? Satan is the enemy. They're just blinded, that's all. They're willingly ignorant, like the Bible says. But even the National Center for Science Education knows it's okay to teach creation if you want. William Provine said, teachers and school boards in public schools are already free under the Constitution of the United States to teach about supernatural origins if they wish in their science classes. Laws can be passed in most countries of the world requiring discussion of supernatural origins in science classes and still satisfy national legal requirements. And I have a suggestion for evolutionists. Include discussions of supernatural origins in your classes and promote discussion of them in public and other schools. Come off your high horse about having only evolution taught in science classes. The exclusionism you promote is painfully self-serving and smacks of elitism. Why are you afraid of confronting the supernatural creationism believed by the majority of persons in the U.S. and perhaps the worldwide? Good question. Why are they so afraid of this topic? I speak in public schools all the time. I'm telling you, some schools, though I can't get into, they are just absolutely afraid of having a creationist come in. There's no reason to fear. The fact is, most folks don't believe in evolution anyway. The fact is, there's no law saying you can't teach creation. Just go ahead. You don't know. It is against the law for the public school teacher to use tax dollars to try to convert the kids to be a Buddhist or Catholic or Baptist or something else. That is against the law. But it's not against the law to discuss creation. Provine said, shouldn't students be encouraged to express their beliefs about origins in a class discussing origins? If you're discussing origins, then let's discuss origins. But see, in the mind of the evolutionist, your answer must be naturalistic. Suppose I said, I want you to explain how computers came to be, but you cannot use man as your answer. I want a naturalistic explanation of how computers came to be. Well, you're dead in the water right up front because of the definitions I gave. And the evolutionist says we have to explain how the world got here, but we can't use supernatural as an explanation. Well, duh. And what we got here is like two computers arguing with each other. Does man exist? They can't see him, they can't touch him, they can't feel him. But he does exist. See, it's obvious the creator would be outside of the creation. He's above and beyond. He's not affected by what he created. God created time, space, and matter. He's outside of time, space, and matter. God's not affected by time. This is not 2003 in heaven. There's no time. And after we get to heaven, one of the first things you're going to do is flip your watch off and fling it over the side. You won't need that. There's no time there. We sing all these songs, when we've been there 10,000 years. That's baloney. It's a good song, I like it, but we're not going to be there 10,000 years. We're just going to be there. Now, my brain can't handle that thought, but, I can think about thinking about it. This public school teacher said, I'm a public school teacher, Mr. Hovind. I went to a conference today, and we were all given a new science textbook to use in the conference. It's called Sciences by Triffel and Hazen and John Wiley and Sons. On page 611, it said this, to what extent do you think that parents should have the right to decide which scientific theories and ideas are presented in schools? To what extent do you think parents ought to have the right to demand that opposing religious views be taught as well? Should the views of creationism, which are primarily based on one particular type of Christianity, be given special consideration? It's getting more difficult to say the truth all the time. The teachers now are being trained in sessions to how to handle creationists. I know this. They work very hard to make you feel like you are the only one complaining. When I went to meet the lady in charge of the science curriculum here in Pensacola, Florida, when I first moved to town, I've been complaining about some of the lies in the textbooks and the science curriculum, and she said to me, Mr. Hovind, you are the only person in the county complaining about this. I thought, there's 128 Baptist churches in this town, plus all the other flavors? I mean, what's everybody doing? Aren't we supposed to be the salt of the earth? Man, salt irritates. Go irritate somebody. That's our job. Teachers can teach creation science in the classroom if they want. There's never been a law against it. Not only can you teach creation science in the public schools, you can teach it right out of the Bible. There's no law against reading your Bible in public school or bringing your Bible to public school. Or you can teach or devote a class to religion, and you can have the textbook be the Bible. We know the effects what happened in 1963 when the Bible was taken out and evolution was put in the schools, but we got deceived by the ACLU. In 1963, the Supreme Court banned the use of the Bible to get kids saved, which is not good, obviously, but it's a lot better than what the ACLU led us to believe. They did not throw the Bible out. We have thrown the Bible out because we have allowed ourselves to be deceived by the ACLU. You might want to get the website, BibleInSchools.net, and get the information by Elizabeth Rittenauer. She helps people start Bible classes in their public school. Preacher, how'd you like to go every day and teach a Bible class to the public school kids at Tate or at Scambia High? Wouldn't it be awesome? You can do it. She knows how to cut through all the red tape and get it done. ACLU. Well, we could talk a long time about that. Call BibleInSchools.net, get a hold of Elizabeth, or get the book from us, Teaching Creation Science in Public Schools. And it's certainly fine to do that, and many schools do. States can require teachers to discuss evolution. They can do that. They set the state standards. The state school board or the legislature will rule and say, this is what we want the kids to know by 3rd grade or by 5th grade or by 7th grade. They have state standards. And they sometimes include evolution. The kid must know about evolution by 8th grade. Now the problem is, the atheists are really good at packing that committee. That way you only have to have 5 or 6 atheists in the whole state, and you can control what all the kids are learning. And then the Christians wait till the books are chosen to meet the standards and get in the classroom, and then we complain about the books in the classroom. You're about 3 years too late. State standards are going to be selected for Florida textbooks in the next 2 months. This is the time. It'll affect the books that they buy in '94, September '94. Now is the time to do something. The states cannot require them to discuss creation. It's already been tried many times. And I've seen so many people waste enormous time and money on an effort trying to force creation into the schools. I'm telling you, you're wasting your time. It's not going to happen. And the atheists love it when a campaign gets started to say, we're going to make the schools teach creation. They love that. They just let you spend all your money and waste all your time and then defeat you in the last 5 seconds. You're not going to go anywhere. The teachers may discuss creation if they like in their class. They've always been allowed to do that. You might want to get a hold of the website textbookreviews.org. Mel Gabler. They've for 40-some years have been doing research on public school textbooks and what's being taught. Mel said, the courts allow states to require discussing scientific weaknesses in evolution theory, but not requiring discussing evidence for creation. You can't make the teacher talk about creation, but you can require them to talk about the weaknesses in the evolution theory. That's a start. In the landmark decision back in 1963, the court held, it certainly may be said that the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historic qualities. Nothing we have said here indicates that such study of the Bible or religion, when presented objectively as part of a secular program of education, may be effected consistently with the First Amendment. Supreme Court said, the Bible may constitutionally be used in an appropriate study of history, civilization, ethics, comparative religion, or the like. Eighth Circuit Court ruled and said, permitting public school observances which include religious elements promotes the secular cause of advancing the students' knowledge and appreciation of the role our religious heritage played in the social, cultural, and historical development of civilization. Teachers already possess the flexibility to present a variety of scientific theories about the origins of mankind and are free to teach any and all facets of this subject, 1987 Supreme Court. The court further ruled, teaching a variety of scientific theories about the origins of mankind to school children might be done with a clear secular intent of enhancing the effectiveness of science instruction. California State School Board said, discussions of any scientific fact, hypothesis, or theory related to the origins of the universe, the earth, and of life, the how, are appropriate to the science curriculum. They're telling their teachers, if you want to talk about creation, do it.